Hey there, Zoe here. Welcome back to the show. The theme for this week is the future of communication. My question for you is, do you know your fight language? And if you do you know how to make it constructive? Let's find out. On Planet Human, the Edelman Trust Barometer report is out, and it is scathing. Things are not looking good. In the report, they say that over the past few years, fear has been a real trend, and that has driven polarization. And now that is driving grievance. So things are really trending downwards when it comes to trust. And the report indicates that there is a mass class divide. So the divide between wealthy and not wealthy is increasing. There is lack of access to quality information, as in we can't trust the things that we're reading or listening to. There is a prevalent belief that the system is broken, the system being the media system, the government system, the economic system. And leading to that is this sense of despair that things are not going to get better, things will not get better, things will continue to decline, that our children will be worse off than we are. So the optimism seems to be down the toilet, according to the Edelman Trust Barometer. So they say that there's a lot of work to do to restore trust in the various systems. Business needs to operate on its ethics and principles. We see that flipping and flopping, but the more that we do that in our own businesses to help gain trust and keep trust of our stakeholders and our communities, that's essential. Government basically needs to make things better for the individual so that prices of goods go down, job security is up, and wages go up so that people can feel like they are actually progressing in their lives as opposed to making things go worse. NGOs need to bridge the difference between the two, continue to make strides in supporting a healthier, more compassionate society and filling the gaps where government and communities are not able to fill those gaps. And media. Well, I've spoken previously about media. Trust in media is at an all-time low. So we need to be diligent about where we source our information and support independent journalism, bias-free reporting whenever we find it. In Australia, I think we have a couple of things going for us. One is the ABC. It's a fairly independent, though one could argue left-leaning enterprise. It is still independent of government, which is good. It's operating on behalf of the community, which is great. We have the Australian Electoral Commission, which is a good oversight of how our elections are run to help prevent corruption and maintain uniformity across all the states and how we do our elections. And we also have the Australia Institute, which asks big picture questions about what's happening in the Australian society. So there's some things that are on our side in our part of the world, which other parts of the world don't have and are suffering from. So there's some good news amongst all the bad news on Planet Human. Happening on Planet Zoe, this is pre-recorded before I go on my Australian Alpine Walking Track. By the time this comes out, I should have returned, hopefully safe and well, and I'm presumably recovering from the epic ordeal. So I'm looking forward to bringing you an update on next week's show with what happened on the Australian Alpine Walking Track and my grand adventures there. What I do know should be happening by the time you get this is that the Kickstarter is about to go live on May 19th. So we're getting very, very close to the launch of my next book, Power Games: A Leader's Guide to Office Politics and Drama-Free Collaboration, with all the exciting bonus special offers to go along with that. So if you signed up to the Kickstarter page, you'll get first notice, best in, best dressed around some of those bonuses. So that's all coming up soon. Yee, exciting. What if and how might we? What if we assumed good intent? How might that change our experience of others? So there's often said that in conflict, we need to assume good intent of the other person. And I think that needs a qualification. I think we can assume self-interest, assume that people are operating from their own self-interest, as we often do. I don't think it's true that every person operates with the good intentions towards every single other human. I think they have good intentions towards their own interests first, and possibly for those across the way who are surrounding them. So assume self-interest, I think, is a good principle. Now, that sounds really quite negative, but perhaps I have become a tempered optimist, and hopefully not jaded, but definitely tempered. And it's all the research I did for power games that has led me to this conclusion. It's not always true, though. Even if we assume self-interest, it doesn't always mean at somebody else's expense. And I think that is also true, that we need to keep that in mind. Sometimes the collateral damage of somebody's self-interest is not the intention that they had, and they may be unaware of the repercussions of their actions as a result. And I think that's where we need to go gently, is like, did they really mean to hurt me? Or maybe this was an accidental consequence. And I think that's giving people the benefit of the doubt. And at the same time, there are those who do mean ill intent. And this can sometimes happen to the best of us, because no matter what archetype, positive archetype we are leading from, we can quite easily fall into the shadow. And it's something that I go into great detail in power games to explore how these power games can come to the fore when we start off so well with good intentions, not always self-interest, but also good intentions for others. The elder can become a tyrant. The warrior can become a bully. The diplomat can become a manipulator. The guardian can become a fanatic, and the pioneer can become the gambler. And all of those shadow archetypes play power games with us, which has at their essence self-interest, regardless of repercussions, or blinded to repercussions, I should say. So, and then there's the wild card, the psychopath. And the research, again, is astounding. And this came out of the book, Snakes in Suits, show that 4% of the population in organizations will be psychopaths. Now, psychopaths are those folks who do not have the capacity for empathy. They just don't have the biochemistry, the physiology for it. And yet they are clever. They understand emotions. They understand how to manipulate emotions of others to get what they want. And what do they want? They want to play power games because it's how they get energized. They don't have any other emotional life apart from this idea of power and conquest. And so they will play games with you, cozying up and being your best friend, only to drop you later, sacrifice you on the heap of their ambition so they can get what they want. Yes, these people actually do exist. And I find that quite confronting, because I like to believe the best in everyone. And sometimes in some people, there is no best. Boy, that sounded really jaded and sad, didn't it? And yet the glimmer of hope is you, as somebody with a big heart who wants to make a big difference, can make a big difference if we go in both sensible and sensitive. So being compassionate and wise. And just because you want to believe the best in people doesn't mean that the worst kind of people don't exist. So eyes wide open, heart wide open. It's tea time in the office kitchen, and I'm sipping on the last sip of my chai. Yum. That was really yummy. Okay. My guest today is Lena Morgan. She is the creator and author of The Fight Languages. She is a former midwife, and as a former midwife, she knows a little something about communication when things are difficult. So she has applied all of her insights and research to helping organizations grow better cultures where everyone is understood. So we have quite an interesting conversation about our fight languages and how we can turn that to something useful and not something combative. Let's get into it. All the way from Anchorage, Alaska. Welcome to the show, Lena Morgan.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here, Zoe.
I know, I got really excited about Anchorage. I'm like, oh my God, like the song.
No, it's beautiful right now. We are coming out of winter and into spring. And so Alaska's not living up to the ideal at the moment, but we'll get back there.
So how much light have you got during the day? Have you got any daylight yet?
Yeah, we're back to normal daylight hours, which we are very excited about. The sun's rising around 8 in the morning and setting around 6 at night. But we're very recently out of the sun rising about 10:30 or 11 and setting around 2:30. So
Oh my God, that's so short. Oh, yeah,
yeah.
that's one of the challenges of living so far north.
It really is. But then we get that incredible season during the summer where, the sun rises around 2 in the morning and sets around 11 p.m. So it's manic and you can just go all day long.
Does that drive people manic, like just having not enough sleep?
I mean, definitely it's a lot of use of blackout curtains, just so you can go to sleep. Parents with small children are the ones that suffer the most, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for making time to show up from Anchorage, Alaska. And what time is it there, actually?
It's 3:45 in the afternoon, so I
Very
think we're a
reasonable
day
time.
behind you.
Yeah, very reasonable. It is Tuesday. It is Tuesday today here as we record this. So it's Monday
hmm
afternoon there.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, now we've sorted out geography and time zones. Let's get into fight languages, which is your latest book. And thank
hmm
you for giving me a copy to have a look at before the interview. Very handy little resource. So, what prompted you initially to write about fighting of all things?
Yeah. And my path to conflict resolution and fighting is not a traditional one. So I was a midwife before I went into conflict resolution. And I mean, it's very easy to think that the two are completely unrelated, but as
Yeah.
it turns out, when you're stepping with people into what will probably be some of the most tense and stressful times of their life, and you're helping them communicate effectively and figure out how to advocate for themselves and have difficult conversations when physically, mentally, emotionally, everything's in upheaval, then gosh, if we're just talking to, people in a work setting, it's so much easier. So after I retired from midwifery, I really wanted to do something that still had me empowering people, helping them communicate effectively and advocate for themselves. And it felt like this was an arena that not so many people wade into just because it is uncomfortable, it's difficult. You're going to be in awkward spaces having challenging conversations. And I was like, oh, I know exactly how to do that. Let's try it out.
Do people fight a lot during childbirth? I'm just curious.
Well, absolutely, you're going to have a lot of couples figuring heavy things out during the pregnancy and birth for sure.
Okay.
Because whatever was small is going to become big now when we add this additional stress of the pregnancy or a new baby on top. But then also just working with people to help them figure out how they need to communicate when they're in labor and things are really intense, figuring out how I could communicate effectively with someone who was just 10 out of 10 stressed out, really not able to be in their reasonable mind, made it so much easier to have those difficult conversations when it wasn't so fraught and tense.
Okay, I can see that. I've never given birth, and I've
Uh-huh.
only been on the periphery of a birthing room, look, minding the 2-year-old as the as the new child came through.
Sure.
So I'm not fully abreast of whatever happens in that room, but I can imagine it's very tense. So I can see the analogy and the segue into that. I want to
hmm
ask you also about your choice of language, the fact that you said the fight languages and
hmm
fighting has is a quite a powerful word with lots of different connotations. Why did you choose that as a frame as opposed to like conflict?
Sure, right. Well, and I think a lot of times when we read something that says conflict resolution, we're just immediately turned off by it, right? This isn't going to be information that I'm going to be able to personally use. It can be really dry. It can feel like, okay, this is great in theory, but how am I going to put this into action? So I wanted it to be something that felt tangible and relatable. And the fight languages, listen, everybody fights, right? Like whether we are the most peaceful, person in the world or not, other people around us are going to be having conflict and we're going to have to engage in it. So I really wanted it to be something that people, I mean, there's, an appeal of like a fight language. Wait, I've heard of the love languages. What is this? But then to say this is going to be functional, it's going to be useful for you when you're in a fight.
Okay, so let's define what is a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where, I say that conflict is communication. So a fight is communication. It's just somebody doing maybe a really terrible job of talking to you through that communication. So if we think of fighting in more of a neutral term, because it gets a terrible rap, right?
Mm,
Obviously, Everybody's trying to avoid the fight. None of us are ever taught how to fight. We learn that, if someone starts a fight with us, we better be the ones to end it or to avoid conflict at all costs, but we're never taught how to wade into that space and get the very valuable information that's being exchanged there. So we miss out on this huge part of communication that happens in the fight. So, what is a fight? A fight is two people communicating when tensions are getting high, when someone's often getting reactive, and therefore they're responding from their reaction rather than continuing that productive conversation that likely started before we found ourselves in a really tense spot.
Yeah. So thank you for defining that. And as you're talking, I think about fighting as the fight, flight, and freeze modes. And it's an amygdala hijack when people go into this survival piece and they either fight their way through it or run away from it or just go and their brain seize up. So you're talking about how to go out of those destructive, non-productive modes into a constructive place with each other where there might still be tension and issues, and yet you can still get the information that you said, the gold mine that's there in the conversation. So let's start from how you describe the different fight languages. What are they?
Yeah. So there's 5 different fight languages. The first one's the igniter, and this is our anger-based response. Igniters are who we think of when we think of the people we really don't want to fight with. So they tend to come from a background or an experience with fighting where they understand exactly how dangerous a fight can get, either physically or mentally, emotionally, that a fight now carries the potential to really cause harm. So our igniters, rather than trust someone else that they're going to end the fight and keep everything safe, the igniters are going to be the ones that pull the pin out of the grenade and explode in anger, which shuts the whole fight down. So great, they're able to stop something before maybe it harms a relationship, but unfortunately, they're going to be the ones causing the harm to that relationship. So hand in hand with the igniter and their anger comes the guilt and shame on the other side of it. Because they're the ones that are essentially sacrificing themselves to say, okay, I'll be the bad guy. I'm used to taking the blame in these situations. My anger got out of control again. And here we are. I've exploded. I'm the bad guy. But it does serve the purpose of protecting the relationship as that fight might have escalated in other ways. So they have a core need to feel protected in the situation. And if you're not able to provide that to them, for them, they're going to provide that for themselves.
I get it. So let's attack before we are attacked is the kind of
Yep.
modality there.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I say igniters never start fights, but they often end them. So they're the ones that are going to say, like, you need to back off. I don't want to talk to you about this. Why won't you leave me alone? And rather than exit the room themselves, which they could do, they pull the pin out of the grenade, they explode, they force that other person to finally back off and leave them alone.
I've
Yeah.
been on the receiving end of that. It's not fun.
It's not. No, it can be really traumatic to be on the receiving end. And as it turns out, for the igniters themselves, really unfortunate and traumatic. So then we have the amplifiers. These are our emotion-based response. So amplifiers are feeling something intensely inside, and they really need you to understand their experience. So these are the people that in a fight might say things like, you just don't care, or you don't understand, or you're not even listening to me. They really need to have their experience be understood. And you're in a fight with an amplifier because you'll try to understand their experience of like, oh, this must be really hard for you or something. And it just keeps getting bigger. And you're like, why is this happening? I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And it's because the experience that they're having still hasn't been acknowledged. So we tend to come from it, like, well, they must be feeling this. And so we approach the situation, assuming you're feeling this. The amplifier is like, nope, that's not it. And until you understand how I feel, I will amplify this response.
And I'm guessing saying calm down doesn't help either.
right? That's when we see the amplifier pull their own pin out of the grenade, which is to break down in tears. The
Yeah.
amplifiers, I mean, every amplifier I've talked to is like, tell me how I can handle conflict without crying. I'm like, emotions are just your superpower. You have easy access to them. You're able to articulate them in ways that other people barely even know what they're feeling, much less can articulate that feeling out loud.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
So we've had igniter, amplifiers. What else have we got?
So then we've got the negotiator. This is our connection-based response. Negotiators just want everybody to get along. They don't think it's worth fighting about. They're likely going to minimize your experience. You'll hear them say things like, I just don't think it's that bad. Or they're the ones going to be saying, I think if you just calm down, you might see that there's really nothing here to fight about. They might deploy sarcasm, trying to break the tension, or just help things resolve. Negotiators are amazing at understanding someone else's point of view and connecting with them over it. But if someone else is saying, no, if there's the amplifier saying, I really need you to understand how I feel right now, the negotiators just want it to be over and everything to be okay again.
Mhm.
So they might, find the silver lining in the situation that you're still figuring out how you even feel about the situation, much less move on to how it might be okay.
So Lena, are they like pussyfooters? They kind of dance around the issue, or they just try and just like
Yeah.
minimize the emotional tone, or both?
Right. So this might be someone that we see as a people pleaser or, more codependent, that they don't want to bring up the problem, right? They just
Mm-hmm.
want to find a way to fix it. So our negotiators might be someone that's trying to anticipate a problem and go in and provide a solution before a problem's even arisen. And then they feel resentful when someone isn't really appreciative of the fix that they provided that no one actually asked for.
Okay. Number four.
Yeah. Okay, so then we have the analyzers. This is our logic-based person in a fight. So they're the ones that come in, they're black and white. It's facts over feelings. They are the judge, the jury. They are going to make this make sense. And if you don't make sense, then they don't think you have a leg to stand on in the argument. So these are people that are so helpful in a fight, right? If you're surrounded by amplifiers, you need an analyzer there because they're the ones that aren't going to get lost in the weeds of the emotions with the situation. But on the other hand, it can be really challenging if you're fighting with an analyzer because they're going to be picking your argument apart to find the flaw in it. And if they can find the flaw, they feel like, well, I've just you negated your whole argument. You've got nothing now. I won. So analyzers, I mean, they, have this incredible skill set, but they're going to ask questions because they really do want to understand. And everyone on the receiving end of that is going to feel like they're telling me I'm an idiot. They keep saying, well, that doesn't make sense. Yeah.
And making sense doesn't help if you're like in amplifier mode and all you've got is this wellspring of emotion.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. hmm
All right. So
So
who's our
then we
number
coming
five?
in fifth. Yep. We've got our extinguishers. So this is the escape-based response. The extinguishers never wanted to fight. They didn't want to be within 10 miles of the fight. If a tension is happening around them or someone's upset, they are literally looking for the escape hatch. And you might notice the extinguisher, in the discussion with you, literally starts to walk around, putter with things, pick things up. They're going to have a difficult time having eye contact. They do not want to be here. So if you're on the other side of an extinguisher, then you might feel really kind of rejected in the situation. Or if you're the amplifier, you're like, you literally don't care. You're just trying to leave. You don't even want to hear what I have to say. Or that analyzer's like, but look at this. And the extinguisher's like, literally, I want to be gone. So our extinguishers have this incredible skill where they understand when the tension starts to rise, and it would be really helpful to hit pause. Unfortunately, they have to build the skill of hitting play again because they've escaped. They don't want to go back into it, so they have a tendency not to bring it up again.
Yeah. So I think I fall between amplifier and extinguisher that
Mhm.
run away or be overwhelmed by emotion or sometimes both at the same time. So what are we
Right.
to do
So,
with this?
mhm.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lena.
Oh, no, it brings up such a great point that none of us are just one fight language, right?
Okay.
Depending on the situation, the person, depending on what our internal bandwidth is, we might start with one fight language. So you probably, show up with that amplifier fight language where you know what you're feeling and you're feeling it strongly. But then if those feelings aren't acknowledged by the people around you, or it's like, maybe the people around you don't have the capacity to acknowledge it, then it's you kick into that extinguisher fight language. You're just going to shut it down. Okay, never mind. Let's just move on. Like, we don't need to talk about it. And I'll also mention none of these fight languages are better than the other, right? There's no ideal fight language to have. They all have amazing, productive things that we want to have in the conversation with us, and they all have harmful protective qualities that make it difficult to fight with them.
All right. So as a team leader, I've got my own fight language and I'm looking around my team and I can see all these different characters or different fight languages bubbling away, particularly if we have got some tense topics to deal with. Where do I start? What do I do?
Perfect. So the place you're going to start with is your own fight language. Because remember, you and this other person are in communication. If you change the way you're communicating, that's 50% of the relationship that's changed. Now the whole thing's changed. So the understanding that you can have about your own internal reaction well before it becomes an external reaction that now the people around you are going to react to or respond to or have to deal with does wonders when I work with people in business settings that, they're having difficulty with managing their team. If we just work on their fight language, they're going to have access to so much more understanding and curiosity and empathy when their own response is handled before even looking to the staff around them.
And in your book, you go through some pivots that you can do for yourself
Mhm.
individually. So, and a lot of the recommendations you give are somatic in terms of just managing your
Yep.
physiology. Ooh,
Mhm.
just about pulled the cord out of my microphone there. Getting
Good save.
excited expression with my hands. So, what are some helpful techniques that we can give listeners in terms of managing our own biology and other pivots that you think are really helpful for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason that I focus on these pivots is because, hands down, we all stay in the fight way too long. We stay beyond the point where it could be productive, and we stay until it gets protective for everyone, where people are shutting down and they're reactive. So, if you can understand what your early signs with the igniter, for example, a lot of times when I'm working with igniters, either in leadership positions or just an igniter parent, they're used to waiting until they hit anger or rage before they do something about the situation. And I start talking to them about identifying frustration or irritation as the point when we want to hit pause and pivot. So, for our igniters, if you have that anger based response, I want you to physically move that anger out of your body. In doing that, the first thing that's happening is we're acknowledging that you're angry, right? So many igniters are used to having to downplay that, stuff their anger down. It makes people uncomfortable. Nobody knows how to handle anger. And if we say, no, this is simply what you're feeling, great. Head outside, go, punch the air or chop wood or punch a pillow or just have that silent scream that acknowledges the anger you're feeling, rather than what we tend to do is wait for that other person to acknowledge and validate our emotion. So all of these pivots are about acknowledging it yourself rather than waiting for someone else. For our
So,
oh, go ahead. Sorry.
the body seems to be a really good messenger for us. That's what
Absolutely.
I'm hearing. So those of us who are igniters and have a fight response where it's like this intense energy, that energy actually needs to go somewhere. So purging it. I think you even mentioned doing push-ups. It's a way to
Yes,
handle it. I'm like,
exactly.
cool. Yeah, burn off some energy. It's like, okay, yes, that energy is out of my
Right?
body. But everybody has different kind of waves of energy. So I
Mhm.
interrupted you. So you're going igniter amplifier. Let's go there.
Right. And with all of the different fight languages as well, in talking to just, thousands of people about this at this point, it's always amazing to me how we think if we were to hit pause and do any of these pivots, we'd have to set that conversation down for the rest of the day, right? It's over, it's gone, oh my gosh. And so we have a tendency to not want to not lose the momentum on the conversation or fight for whatever it is we feel so passionate about. But time and time again, I find if you were to say, hey, I'm just going to head to the bathroom. I'm going to be right back and we'll pick this conversation up. And you did something that acknowledged the internal response that you were having. I mean, it really is. It's 5 to 10 minutes,
Yeah.
and you can totally change the energy on that. I mean, we know an emotion lasts for 90 seconds, I believe it is. Like it really is, it's here and it's gone, but we attach a story to it and we attach to that feeling, and now it can last for hours. So with
Yeah.
our amplifiers, it's really about moving your body in ways that evoke emotion. So these are people that I think it's really helpful to listen. I mean, every amplifier I know has certain songs that, like, when they need a good cry, or, like that clip of the movie that they can watch and be in touch with that emotion. So listening to music, dancing, moving your body in ways that feel evocative of whatever it is. You're angry, okay? You're stomping and your fists are slamming on the air. You're really sad and you're hugging yourself and you're swaying in that. Again, you're acknowledging that feeling for yourself. And that's why I think the bathroom's handy. If you have a glass-walled office, this might get awkward.
Yes. Yeah. Crazy
Exactly.
person behind the glass wall there. Look out.
Right? Yeah. The conversation would be very different when you came back. Just handle with kid gloves now. And then our negotiators, right? We want you to feel reassured of the connection. So some of it is just reminding yourself, like, this doesn't have to be resolved today. It will be resolved. A lot of negotiators need to take time with, in the same way the extinguisher benefits from it, sitting with like a weighted blanket or sitting in a quiet space where a negotiator can just come back to their own feeling again. Negotiators tend to be so focused on the other person that they really lose track of what their experience is or how they feel in that situation. So, for a negotiator just to go to their office, sit quietly, breathe deeply. Our negotiators don't want to yell and stomp and, like swing their arms around the way the igniters and the amplifiers might need to in that situation.
Okay. Yeah, that's really interesting. Weighted blanket. I've got one of those. You can lug it
Yeah,
around.
right.
You have to take one to the office. Ooh.
Right. You know what I found? I've had some negotiators when they were in office situations, like those rice bags that you can
Yeah.
microwave,
Yeah.
literally setting that on top of their hands or on their
Okay.
shoulders, where it's something really small and portable that does just help you ground back down into your body. You're here, your nervous system is understanding, like, we're safe. There
Got
is
it.
no, lion chasing us right now.
Love it.
So then our analyzers, I love this one because the analyzers hear all of these different things and they're like, I don't want to do any of that. None of that would make me feel better in the situation.
Yeah.
So the analyzers, I challenge to do something really mentally tricky, like a Sudoku puzzle or some, like online word game. Every analyzer has something like that they love to do. Something that requires your full attention to be put on it as your brain works it out, right? Because that is what helps bring the analyzer back into a more grounded, connected space, is their brain gets that big workout rather than others that need that physical workout with it.
That's really fascinating. So do I'm imagining the analyzers just walk around like they're a head attached to a body. And
It's so true. Yeah. Mhm.
so helping them to get grounded in their body isn't helpful to them.
And not as much because their brain is going so fast at that
Okay.
point that we really have to override that, just quick cycle that's happening in their brain. If they do that, then they can do things that would help them come back into their body. But otherwise, they're going to be sitting there and their brain will be running the show, really.
Okay, awesome. All right. And then we've got the extinguisher. The
Yep, the
runaway,
extinguisher.
runaway.
Right. So the extinguisher really benefits from quiet, some noise canceling headphones that they can put on, a quiet, dark space that they can go to. If you're at home and you have a pet, to sit with that pet and kind of like regulate your nervous system with it can be really helpful. The weighted blanket, again, I'm amazed always. So extinguishers can be challenging because once they're out of the fight, they don't want to go back in it. But if they have that window that says, okay, we're going to hit pause for 10 minutes, let's go stretch our legs, we're going to come back and regroup, extinguishers really are able to quickly kind of move through that feeling and feel ready to go back into the conversation if they know they can hit pause when they need to. So it's like as long as they know they can access that escape hatch, they're far more willing to come back into the conversation and continue.
Awesome. Lena, that was great. Now, are you ready for the fast three?
All right, fantastic.
Okay, let's do it. Number one, what is the future technology you most want right now?
I tell you, so in Alaska, coming out of winter, I am ready for the most immersive VR experience of being on the beach with the warm sand. I want the Hawaiian vacation that I can access anytime.
Really? Okay, fantastic. Number two, what's the best tip you ever got for leadership?
I think a really helpful tip that I got was everybody has off days. I mean, I think we don't extend that to ourselves, that we might just be having an off day. We tend to, catastrophize it that this is going to last forever or I shouldn't feel this way. And I think if we gave ourselves, our employees, our, friends, family, permission to have off days, I think the conversations would get a lot more productive.
Fantastic. And number three, what are you reading or listening to right now?
I am loving Jefferson Fisher's podcast on communication. I think he does an amazing job of scripting out phrases to use when you're in conflict and how to set boundaries. I think he's wonderful. I really appreciate his take on conflict.
Fantastic. Well, that was the fast three. That was probably the fastest three I've done in a while. So, congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thanks very
Yeah.
much.
Sometimes we can get distracted and rabbit on, or I can get distracted and rabbit on. So,
Mhm.
that was terrific. So, what question have I not asked that you would love to answer?
Um, I love talking about why conflict is so necessary when it comes to our relationships and our businesses. And conflict is always information about what's important to someone, right? So if in our businesses, with our teams, with our consumers, we thought of conflict as, or, tension or someone being really upset as information about what's important to them, we really this is an absolute gold mine, like you said, of information that we could be using to better connect with people, to better meet the needs of our customers, or to have our employees feel like they're really understood and valued in the organization. So to look at conflict as an opportunity, I mean, that changes everything.
I love that. Thank you, Lena. So, where can people find out more about you and your work?
Excellent. So you can go to fightlanguages.com. There's a free quiz you can take to find out what your fight language is. You have access to my book, the audio book, and the Kindle on there as well. Social media, it's lenamorgan.co that you can go on Instagram. I'm on all the major platforms, and there is a ton of information. I've been creating content for a while on this, so lots of free resources to start to figure out like, what is my fight language and how am I reacting?
That's great. And thank you for the book. I think it's a really handy resource and something that can be gone to again and again as you experience the gold mine of information that can come in tense situations.
Yes, exactly.
Lena, thank you so much. It's been fabulous speaking with you, and thank you for sharing all your wisdom from the last however long, as first as a midwife and now as a information gatherer expert. Is that the right
Thank you.
description? Anyway, fight language expert. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. On Read to Lead this week, it is the book by my guest, Fight Languages, The Turning of Conflict into Communication by Lena Morgan. And I love this really short, powerful little book. It's only 75 pages, and it gives us a very detailed look at the 5 fight languages, how it manifests in language, what the source of that is, and more importantly, how we can deal with it ourselves if it's our own fight language, and how we can respond to it if it is somebody else's fight language. It's a really fantastic handbook for dealing with what feels like difficult situations and difficult conversations. And when we have this key that's offered in the book, we can decipher what's going on and then build a path forward. So that's how we can do it. Fight Languages is your useful handbook for this week. That's it for the show this week. I do hope you enjoyed it and got some really good nitty-gritty helpful tools for you. If you want even more helpful tools, do sign up to be a podcast insider. Go to zoerouth.com, click on podcast. As a podcast insider, you will get an implementation tip sheet, sometimes a checklist to go along with each and every episode tailored to the content of that episode so that you can start to implement and learn right away with you and your team. And we also offer discussion questions so you can have great, robust conversations with your teams around the topics and again, further the culture and strategy of your team. We also have water cooler factoids that are really interesting little tidbits that you can share while sipping your water or your latte or whatever it is and go, did you know, by the way, blah, blah, blah. So we offer that as part of the Podcast Insiders. I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, Zoe at zoerouth.com. Drop a comment on any of the social media platforms. Rate or review the show on any of the channels that you're listening to. So appreciated. Gets the word out there. And after 9 years of doing this, it is so energizing to hear from listeners. I really do appreciate it. It keeps me motivated and keeps me looking for great guests and great conversations and new opportunities to learn and grow right alongside you. Up next week, oh my goodness, this is such a great conversation with Elle Griffin. She is a utopian visionary, and she is set on changing the future of wealth and capital for the what? I can't read this. Oh, let me try that again. She is set on changing the future of wealth and capital for the better. There you go. She's got a strong vision of how we might go about reinventing how we develop and share wealth as employees, as entrepreneurs, as business people, as communities. So this is a mind-expanding conversation that's all coming up next week. In the meantime, live with grace, lead in service, live well, lead well.